Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Name the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is the king under the sea, Frank. How are you today? Captain Frank, king of the sea. How are you today?
Why do I feel like I wasn't prepared for this under the sea bit? Because if I was prepared, I would probably be like doing like a Sebastian bit and be like, "Oh yeah, the seaweed is always greener." Like
We might have. So when we were kids, we used to go get seafood at a place called Captain Frank's.
nice.
Actually, yep, you weren't there. Ever.
No, I wasn't.
No. So I guess there's more than one person in the universe named Frank.
What? No way.
Spoilers, I guess, for something. I don't know. That's a
Punisher.
spoiler. It's not really. Yeah, the Punisher. Good, Frank Castle. Good. Do you hate that the Punisher shares your name?
I don't care.
Do you care?
I really
'Cause you
don't
don't
care
really-
one way or another. I don't.
Okay.
The amount of time I spend thinking about the Punisher is like 0.00001%. Whenever people talk about the Netflix show Punisher, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the one time a year I'm going to think about this character.
That's good. I wonder because you know, if you're a superhero fan, right? Then you say like, oh, what's my superhero name equivalent? Who else has
Right.
my name?
Right.
And so I get Tim Drake,
Right.
You know,
Right.
a Robin, which is Red Robin, which is pretty outstanding, you know. And then you get the Punisher, which for some people is pretty outstanding, but for you, Frank, it's kind of. How do you feel about that?
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
You know, they're the only Superman. So you get a Batman character, right, in Tim Drake, which is great because he's your favorite. Batman's your favorite. But
Yep.
For me, the only Superman character that comes to mind that has the name Frank is the mayor of Metropolis is Frank Berkowitz. So got that going for me.
That's
Played by
the
Sonny
worst.
Bono on Lois and Clark.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
It's fine. It's fine. Not great.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
So, what are you drinking?
Well, I am drinking another one of those fancy beers that a friend picked up for us at a brewery. This time, he went to Treehouse Brewing. Treehouse Brewing is a pretty well-respected brewery. I think they're in Western Massachusetts. So not close to Boston, but a little further out there out west, heading towards New York State. And they're another, sort of small batch microbrewery that makes a very, very highly regarded bunch of beers. In this case, it is the HAZE Double IPA. And this is a very heavy one. So if you're not into the heavy hoppy IPAs, I would say stay away from this one. It's called HAZE for a reason. It's unfiltered, and it is a very it's a little fruity. It's got some peach in there, but it's a citrusy, heavy IPA. Not for the faint of heart. Very earthy, but very, very good if you're into some good beers. So Treehouse HAZE IPA, double IPA.
Citrusy and heavy sounds really good.
It's an interesting combination, and I really recommend it. If it sounds like it's up your alley, I would say check it out. It's really cool. It's hard to get because you can only get it at the brewery. But if you ever want to take a road trip out of Charlton, Mass, we can go.
I'm okay for a road trip.
Okay, cool.
You know, I'll see you in a few hours.
All right, cool.
Great.
Meet you there.
I got to get my shoes on. Anyway, I am not drinking a beer, Frank. I am drinking a sparkling seltzer, a black cherry from Schweppes, because I got to say hydrated, Frank, because this is the Aquaman episode.
I see what you did there.
I had to be drinking some kind of water, but I didn't want to drink just any kind of regular water, boring blah water. So I went for the sparkling kind because Aquaman sparkles up my life. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. I think I do.
That's good. All right, great.
So what was your overall impression of this film? I want to hear from, I'm very curious to hear from you what your sort of general broad strokes thoughts are.
Well, I, like you, with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, saw Aquaman early because I'm very busy and important. So I have Amazon Prime, which allowed me to see it early.
Right. Yeah, they did that promotion where it was like you could see it a week or so early if you were a Prime subscriber in theaters.
In theaters, yep. You could see it a week. If you're an Amazon Prime, you just, prove that you're Amazon Prime, and then you could see it a week early in the theaters. So it was great. So I did it, and it was great. So overall impressions, I friggin' loved Aquaman.
Nice.
I loved it. I loved it so hard. And I know that there are some clunky bits and some maybe storytelling flummoxes or whatever you want to say, but overall it's the exact kind of tone that I want in a comic book film, especially depending on I think it's character dependent, certainly.
Okay.
But it was a tone that played off of the charisma of its leading actor.
Okay.
As opposed to, because Jason Momoa could very easily, and has been, can be dark and sinister. He's not like he's like he has to be the charming, like, sassy, sassy star or whatever. He could be quite eerie and scary if he wants to be, but that's not the hero that I want to follow, right?
Sure.
And so if Arthur is supposed to be king, then I want that man to be kingly.
Sure.
I want to think that man can be king, and I honestly didn't think that the movie was going to make me believe that Jason Momoa's Arthur Curry could be king. And by the end, I was like, "Wow, damn it, they did it!
They did it.
He could probably do it," because I think everybody else in the film was like, "He also can't do this.
Yeah,
this is not good." And he's like, "I can't do this. This is not good." So the film got me on his side because everyone was like, "This is really our only option. It's not really about you being best for the job. It's about you being better for the job than an egomaniac or than a megalomaniac."
True.
And so this is kind of where we land ourselves. But I think the movie starts slightly clunky, like it has a lot of information to get out to its audience very quickly, like, oh, hey, Atlantis, undersea kingdom, this is a thing, and this is a thing, and this is Atlanta, and this is this, and this is this, and this is this. However, it still to me felt like it kind of took its time with the Atlanta stuff and Arthur's father and the lighthouse and everything. I didn't feel like we rushed through Arthur's origin as a child. I think there was plenty of good info. There's plenty of good info in there. The fight scene with Atlanta was very cool. And then but then there was that in between part where Arthur's an adult before he goes to Atlantis, and that's the bit that felt like I was like, we need to get moving now. But then once it did, it was great, and I thought it flowed very, very well from there. I think the color palette chosen for the film was smart, because if we're underwater the whole time, it could have looked real dark and murky very quickly, very dull. Like honestly, like Justice League's version of Atlantis, which isn't even Atlantis, as we find out. It's some like offshoot little site somewhere where because he's never been to Atlantis before. That could have been real boring to watch for a long time, like horribly dull.
Oh yeah.
And so, but this was great. I loved it. What did you think?
I liked it overall. I have decided that I liked it. I wasn't so sure at first, but I think it is a good movie with problems. I wasn't sure whether it was just an okay movie that had some good parts, or if it was a good movie with problems. I've decided it's a good movie with problems that I can overlook. Problems that I can overlook. I felt a little off kilter for a lot of the movie. I agree that there was a lot of, I want to say the first hour of the movie or so, there was a lot of, it was very exposition heavy. Mm-hmm. And the way a lot of that exposition was done was in dialogue. Yeah. For much of the first half of the movie. So it kind of felt like every 10 minutes there was an action scene, and then in between there was a lot of dialogue, and then 10 minutes of action and then more dialogue. And it kind of felt like we were going in this cycle over and over again of just standing around talking and then fighting, and then standing around talking and then fighting. I kind of felt like,
I do not disagree with that.
What the movie. Okay. So I felt like for pacing reasons, it was a little bit up and then down and then up and then down. I would have almost preferred something a little bit more like what Wonder Woman did, where they took care of a lot of the exposition with the origin piece, right? When she's on Themyscira, I kind of would have liked some of that stuff, like him being trained when he's a kid, and all the stuff of him finding out about his mother, and all these things that happened when he was younger. They did them in flashbacks, and I respect the thinking there. I'm just not sure that it worked for flow the way that I would have preferred. I think that it just that made it feel a little scatterbrained. I also feel like they kind of crammed Black Manta in there when there wasn't really much for him to do in this movie. And it may have been wiser to just have the patience to hold off, maybe have the breadcrumbs, to lead up to a sequel. But it felt like they crammed too much of him in there for not, he wasn't really the main villain of the movie. He was just kind of there, and he moved the plot along, but I don't know that he was necessary, and I feel like it was kind of a waste of this character. And I understand the idea is that in a sequel he'll be the main villain, and I'm actually excited for that for a couple of reasons we can talk about later. But I felt like that was just felt a little crammed in there and made it feel a little busy. I really loved the Arthur Mara going to find the Trident storyline. That for me was the best element of the movie, like the best story element of the movie. Like I found that the most easy to follow, interesting to follow. And it had like a little bit of Indiana Jones or the Mummy, depending on your preference. It had a little bit of that. It had a little bit of Arthurian, looking for Excalibur. It had all these great, like the best of the best storytelling devices were in that plot line. And in a lot of ways, it felt like that was the main plot line, and other stuff was maybe added on or was accentuated more afterwards. But it felt like that was sort of the main driver of the story, and that was the story that I was the most interested in. And kind of every time we went back to Atlantis and saw the war getting ready to get off the ground, and the different machinations and everything, I kind of felt like I was watching a Star Wars prequel for part of those scenes, where I was sort of like, oh, good, political machinations, great. Where what I really wanted to follow was like the hero's journey. So it felt like it was a little bit scatterbrained for me, but when I take a step back and look at it as a whole, I'm like, it has all these great things. I just think that maybe the order of them was what confused me while I was watching it. I think on a rewatch, I will enjoy it a lot more because I'll be a lot more sort of clear on what's happening and less distracted by like, why are they putting this here when it should be over there? Now I know the full story, so I appreciate it more. So I actually really liked this. I think that there was a little bit of executional, some preferences maybe that some things I would have done differently, but I really enjoyed the movie. And I think this is like James Wan did a really, really good, did some really, really good work here. I think that for me, this was going to be a little bit of a litmus test of how is this universe going to continue now under new leadership. And, we've talked about how since Justice League, there's been a changeover in the overall direction and leadership of the universe. And you've, told me many times, like, well, be patient, because after Aquaman, that's when things will really sort of take off in a new direction. And so I was watching it through those eyes, and I think things have I think it's a step in the right direction for the DCEU, and I hope that they continue down this path. And Wonder Woman 1984 and everything else that Shazam looks amazing. So I think that we're on a good path now, and the next couple of releases that they have look like they're going to be really good. So I think this is sort of the start of a new era for this universe that I am personally more excited about than I have been.
All right. Well, I don't really disagree with any of those things, really. Most of what you said, I talked about in the Spider-Verse episode, like the kind of the 4 different types of like telling a superhero story. You know, the Superman the movie, Batman '89, what do you call it? Mask of Zorro, Batman Begins, whatever. And this is the Batman Begins style of storytelling. The flashback, origins told in flashback as the main story progresses style. And I see what you're saying about, like, okay, I just want to kind of get to the part that I'm interested in. Here we go. But I think part of that, I don't know if that comes from because you're already slightly familiar with the story, you know.
Sure.
So, like when Superman's origin, so I don't really need to see Krypton exploding again. I've seen it multiple times.
Sure.
Or I've seen him as a kid. I don't need to see it in a film again. I've seen the Waynes in Crime Alley, blah, blah, blah. This is first introduction for a lot of people, like, who Aquaman is, because most people don't have a clue. They know he's a joke, and even then, that joke doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
Not really. That's an older joke. It's beyond people now. So, I think what they did was necessary, and I think that if they tried to do it in a way, say like Wonder Woman, like you had suggested, I don't think his story merits that type of origin story telling, because if we watched all of that in sequence, like him as a kid, then him as a teenager, then you'd really be like, oh my God, just like,
yeah, I get
going.
That. I get that. I typically take the side of, like, we don't need to see the origin story in every movie, guys. Like, origin story movies are a little bit played out. Like, I tend to take that side. But in this case, it felt like all those pieces were there, and it felt odd that they were sort of distributed throughout the film rather than done in linear fashion. I get why, and honestly, they probably tried it that way and then it landed on this version for a reason. That very well could be. It just played a little. It was a little jarring for me at points. Like, while we're going back again.
You know, honestly, I think if this was the first time we'd seen him, that's what we would have watched. But because the audience had already been introduced to him in a previous film, technically 2 previous films, then we would have been like, "Where's Jason Momoa?"
Yeah, that's fair.
It's been 20 minutes.
That's fair.
Why, and I wonder if that was a deciding factor. And that's hard to say. I mean, we're not in the room where it happens, so it's really hard to say.
True.
I definitely agree that the finding the trident sequences of the film are the most. They were the best. The Mara Arthur dynamic was pretty great.
Pretty awesome. I did not expect to enjoy that as much as I did. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. I
enjoyed it as much as I hoped I would, which was great. Movie met my expectations and even exceeded them a little bit, so I was excited. They had a wonderful chemistry, and I really dug her as the mentor figure. And she's like, I like that she's the no nonsense, like, we've got to get this done kind of person, and he needed that kind of root in his life. It gives them, because the Aquaman Mara relationship is one of the greats of comic books, right?
Oh yeah,
Lois Lane and Superman, and Batman and his loneliness, and Aquaman and Mara.
Batman and his loneliness. Yeah. Oh my God.
Those are. It was
it was a quiet little ceremony. Just him and his loneliness.
Just him and his loneliness. He was the only one there, really. So, those are some of the best comic book relationships, and Mara and Aquaman are kind of almost like Iris and Barry Allen. Iris and Barry. They're like, they never go anywhere. You know what I mean? They're always together. It's never like, oh, we broke them up or whatever. Although actually, Iris and Barry, they did break them up. And I remember in the New 52 when Merritt and Aquaman were still a couple, but they like unwrit their marriage. Remember that DC and people flipped out. They were like, why would you make them not married? That like they're great. Like, what's the point of that? So, I was happy to see that kind of done justice on screen. And that stuff with Orm, I think you said, he felt like a little Star Wars politic-y that way, Star Wars prequels. Like, I like that part of the prequels, so I can see that as like a negative to people. But the politics of the prequels are what I find really enjoyable about the prequels. Like, to me, like if we were watching Revenge of the Sith, take out General Grievous completely. I just don't care.
I get that. Because there are certain franchises where I feel that way too. Where it's like, oh my God, this is just fighting for the sake of fighting, or like, this is just like another fight scene because we wanted more action in it, or whatever. Like, I can be cynical about that at times, I'll admit.
Yeah. But I think there are some sequences that were like that, like the sequence aboard the sunken ship, of the sword fight. That was a fight scene for the sake of having a fight scene, which I enjoyed because that was like a 100% swashbuckling, like a seafaring Captain Blood adventure movie kind of deal, which was fun, but an unnecessary sequence.
There were a few of those in this movie. I did feel like there was some kind of a mandate from the top that there be action every 10 to 15 minutes.
Sure, I'm sure that there was, because if you notice, they were mostly caught off guard in a side explosion from the wall. It was rather hilarious. Like, I started to count them after a while. People just getting caught off guard with an explosion coming from the wall.
And every time it happened, it was right after they like discovered some big clue to the mystery that they were like, wait a second, you mean this means that like you have to look through the statue to see where the trident is hidden? Boom, explosion! Like every single time they were closer to finding the trident, something happened, and there would be a 10-minute fight sequence, some of which were awesome. That guy running through the walls in Sicily, that was so cool.
Well,
and that was all practical, by the way.
Practical, one camera in one shot.
One shot.
It's stuff like that I almost forgive the film some of its sins,
right? Because
it knows it knows it's making them.
Yes.
James Wan is perfectly aware he has to do this to get here, and so you're just gonna have to say I'm gonna forgive you for this clunky exposition because we're here now.
Yeah. So I feel that way as well. I kind of wish we could see the James Wan cut of this movie, like a director's cut. That's like if he was making this movie with no WB intervention of any kind, what would it look like? How different would it be? Maybe that answer is like only 5% different, and that's cool. Maybe it's more, and I'd be in either way. I'm interested to see what that would look like.
I would probably say that it's probably not very. I don't think it's very different from what we got. I think they trusted him to make the film, but these were the guidelines you had to abide by. And he might have just been like, okay, fine with them. It might not have been like, oh my God, I have to add a sequence.
Oh, it doesn't sound like this was a contentious production the same way that like Justice League was, for example. It sounds like this was a pretty harmonious, people were pretty happy.
They asked him to oversee the DCEU. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
They asked him to oversee it, and he said, no, thank you. I'm not interested. I wanted to make this film. I'm not interested in running the rest of it.
Give it to Patty Jenkins.
Yeah, I don't think she's interested either.
I know, but I wish she was, because I think she'd do a great job.
She probably would, but I don't think she's interested either.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about Orm. What did you think about Orm? Ocean Master.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him. I liked him quite a bit. But I like Patrick Wilson. I think so. I think I had it was on Patrick Wilson's side just because he's in the film in the first place. I think they want him to be Loki or something like that.
Yeah, and James Wan's worked with him before, right? So I felt like there was a like, oh, I want to put my boy out front and center, and I didn't feel like he really. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm also like not a good judge of fantasy stuff, right? And this is Aquaman is much more firmly fantasy, so like that's like asking me, what did you think of this thing that's not for you? Like I thought it was fine because like I think that genre is fine.
Yes, because this it's unabashedly fantasy.
Yeah,
they can breathe underwater because they can.
Just because they can, right?
Because they can. I don't have to explain it to you, and the audience doesn't really seem to even care.
No, it doesn't matter.
Said we can breathe and talk underwater because we can. Okay, great.
Yeah. They didn't go to any great pains to explain it or anything. It's a comic book. It's Aquaman. Just accept it, right? Like, you'll accept a man can fly, accept this man can swim and talk underwater, and that's basically
right.
That's basically it. And it worked. It's not my genre, so I don't have a ton to say about it. Whereas like Loki delighted me because it went out of its way, I feel, to be like, even if you don't like the fantasy aspect or the mythology aspect of it, here's just like a funny character, interesting character, like compelling characters that I felt like bridged the gap into like, even if you don't care about the genre, here are good characters. These were good, but didn't break out of the genre enough.
I think they were genre characters.
They were genre characters. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. That's very astute of you. And I think, he was definitely of the I'm mad, so I am going to do this. But also, I'm like, I don't really disagree with you. Dick, we are trash in the oceans. Maybe
but he did just want power. Like, ultimately, his motivation was to manipulate everybody and to blend fact with fiction and to use, the surface people are killing our oceans, which is all true. But really, all he wanted was to become Ocean Master. And he tried to deflect and be like, oh, no, that's just a title. No, he wanted the title. He wanted the power. He wanted to be the king of the ocean.
That's why he killed Digimon Hinzu so quickly into his tenure in the film.
Because he was like, fine, you're not going to give me what I want, then get out of the way and we'll let this kid do it instead. Like, he was just thirsty for power, which is maybe not the most interesting character motivation, but
no, it's really not. But I think you could turn that character into something interesting from there. A character that has fallen from grace is an interesting character.
Yes.
And so I'd be curious. The film goes out of its way not to kill its villains.
Yes.
It's very specific in that, right? It doesn't kill Black Manta, to your point. I understand people's criticism, like, oh, he didn't really, like, he moved the plot along or whatever, but he wasn't really the main villain. That's fine. I don't care, because you've introduced the villain to me, to an audience for future. That would be like watching Superman the movie and being like, oh, that Zod character was interesting, but he really didn't serve any purpose in Superman 1.
But he was gone in the first 10 minutes, right? They teased him and he disappeared. Like, the 3 Kryptonian villains were gone within the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then they came back in the second movie like, hey, remember these guys? Whereas here we had Black Manta throughout the movie. There was even a little bit of an arc for the character, but that arc didn't really matter to this movie. And so I would rather have less of him. I would rather have that scene at the beginning of the film where Arthur kills his father, and then we don't see Black Manta again for the rest of the movie until maybe the post-credits thing. That would have been better for me, a better use and a better tease, rather than having him sort of spaced throughout and all this sort of, like, I couldn't tell who was going to be the bigger villain. Was going to be Orm or was going to be Black Manta?
I don't see. It's funny because I don't think I ever thought that Black Manta was going to be the big villain. I think I went in knowing without no one ever telling me, but I think I just went in knowing that he wasn't the main villain, that he was just kind of in it right now. So I wasn't like, oh no, he's not doing anything. I was like, that's what he did what he was supposed to do. Maybe because I don't really care about Black Manta.
I don't either. I just wanted to know who was the villain. Like, I just wanted to know, are Arthur and Orm gonna like somehow end up teaming up and take down Black Manta, or is Black Manta gonna team up with Orm? I think you were just thinking too hard. I think you were thinking too hard. I think I was. I also avoided a lot of the marketing materials for this movie on purpose because I wanted to go in with sort of a clean slate.
Sure.
Which I'm glad I did, and I'm going to keep doing. It wasn't like full media blackout, like no trailers, no posters, or nothing, but I definitely didn't see as much of the posters or this. So, like, even just seeing a poster that I don't even know if this exists, but were there any posters or marketing materials or anything that showed like Arthur and Orm like facing off? Because if I had seen that, I would have been like, well, this is obviously the main matchup of the movie. Do you know what I mean? Things like that I didn't see, so I didn't have context going in, and I was just sort of like, which of these two Aquaman villains will they choose to be the main one? Which one's going to be, the Venom, and which one's going to be the Sandman? I don't know.
Oh, sure. See, I mean? I understand, because that is the worry that when you have so many villains in a film, you're like, one gets underserved or both get underserved.
Right.
I didn't really feel that in this film. Maybe because I knew that. You know what? This felt like a comic book arc to me, where it's like, here we're introducing this character. He's not going to be important right now, but when he shows up in another movie, we're going to have a little asterisk that said, see issue 38 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe to your point, like, it doesn't work as well in a film to do that. I think it does when the other film comes out.
Yep.
Like, but a standalone, it maybe doesn't play. I don't know. I
am excited
I
for
get
Black
your
Manta.
point. I'm not with you on it, but I do get it.
That's fair. I am excited for Black Manta in the next movie because I really want to see him chop off Arthur's hand.
I don't think you're going to see that in the next movie.
Damn it.
Because he doesn't really chop off Arthur's hand. He has taken Mera and Aquaman and Arthur's baby, and he chains Arthur up, and Arthur chops off his own hand to escape to save his baby.
Fine. I want to see Hook Hand Jason Momoa is my point.
I think you'll definitely see it, but I think it's going to take a little longer to get there because you're only seeing the beginning of Arthur and Mera's relationship.
That's fair.
I think you're going to have to wait. I think you're going to get Black Manta in 3 films if it makes it that far, and it's going to be film 3 that you get a hand chop. That would be my.
I don't know if I want 3 films of Black Manta though. I kind of want him to be done in the next one,
I think he was fine. He was all right.
He was fine. But he also didn't get a ton of time, so I don't want to judge him harshly on a short performance. I kind of feel like he is teed up now, and he needs to be the big bad in the next movie.
Sure.
And I don't think he has the legs to be, a trilogy's worth of villain. I don't know. It doesn't.
No, but I don't think
they could change my mind on that.
I don't think he needs to be the main focus every time either. I think he could, but I think you could introduce Aqualad. Black Manta's son. Depending on the, in Young Justice, Aqualad is Black Manta's son. You could, there could be a lot of like good stuff that goes along with, along with this. I don't know. Who knows where it's going? I mean, it's definitely, it's made over $667 million worldwide. Yeah. Like, you're getting a sequel.
Yeah, I was going to ask, has a sequel officially been announced, and do we know if James Wan would be on board?
I don't know, and I don't know.
Okay.
As of this recording,
okay.
I don't know, and I don't know. So, but at the time of recording this, our information could be outdated.
Right.
So,
right. By the time you hear this, it may have changed.
By the time it could be up to 700 million worldwide. It's already surpassed. I think it surpassed every DCEU movie except for BVS and Wonder Woman.
Wow.
I think it's past Man of Steel, it's past Suicide Squad, it's past Justice League. And that's not domestic, that's worldwide.
That's worldwide.
That's
worldwide. Well, apparently this film was actually very much marketed towards the Chinese box office.
I'm not surprised.
It makes a lot of sense. The visuals are very it transcends language. It's a kind of fantasy genre that's very popular over there. So it makes a lot of it's just like the perfect confluence of things.
Absolutely. Not surprised in any stretch of the imagination that this is doing well overseas. What did you think about Aquaman riding Julie Andrews at the end of the film?
So I knew Julie Andrews was making a cameo in some way in this movie, and somehow I didn't recognize her voice. I don't know how. I don't know how I didn't recognize her voice. So it wasn't until after, when I was reading the Easter eggs, that I was like, oh my God, that was the cameo. But I don't know. I'm fine with it. It was cool. It was really cool. It's odd to me that she's in this and not in Mary Poppins, but that was cool.
You deliberately didn't want to be in Mary Poppins.
I know. I'm surprised, but
she didn't want to. She thought she would steal the limelight away from the movie.
That's nice.
Which was I think was very humble of her.
Yeah.
In some way, to be like, no, it's going to distract from the point of the movie. So
let Emily have her moment.
Yeah, it was very cool. So anyway, so I'm sure I'll have more to say on Aquaman at another event. But I again, like Spider-Man, I saw it weeks ago, and so my memory of it is a little hazy. But
sure,
I am on vacation this week, so I am going to go for a second viewing.
Very good. Very good.
I'm gonna treat myself.
Treat yourself.
Exactly, Frank. Where can the people find us?
They can find us on iTunes if they want to leave us ratings and reviews. Those matter a whole lot to us. Thank you so much for all of you who do that. You can also find us at patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio. 4 episodes a month. that's like a quarter a week. If you can spare $1 a month, a quarter a week, we'd really appreciate it. A lot of people in 2018 started backing our Patreon more, and we've really grown a lot. We're producing more Patreon exclusive content for you. Things like early reviews of Supergirl episodes that are just for Patreon that no one else gets to hear. Things like cut for time segments where you hear conversations that Tim and I have off mic. And you get early episodes of Beer with Geeks before everyone else gets them. So there's a lot of things that we're doing, and we've got more things coming for our Patreon listeners and subscribers. Thank you so much to all of you for supporting us. $1 a month is really all it takes. Patreon.com/ThoughtBubbleAudio. BeerWithGeeks.com, Beer with Geeks on Twitter, Gmail, and Facebook, and ThoughtBubbleAudio.com for all of our other Thought Bubble Audio Network shows.
Good stuff, Frank. Good stuff. Well, until next time.
Cheers.